Thanks again to Dr. Harold Bailey, Reverend Charles Becknell Sr., Rodney Bowe, and Mason Graham. You can watch that full conversation online right now on the New Mexico in Focus Facebook page. Now, welcome back to our Line Opinion panelists. With Election Day on the brain, the Secretary of State's race is making headlines this week. Republican challenger Audrey Trujillo recently removed an online campaign flyer that offered a chance to win a firearm in return for a $100 donation to her campaign. The offer violated a state ban on raffles to raise money for any candidate for public office. And Justine, was this an innocent mistake or a more calculated maneuver to generate publicity, or how did you read this? Because I would bet that most any candidate has been briefed that you cannot do raffles if you're going to run for office. Innocent mistake?
Maybe a little bit of both. I mean, I think I don't think she intended to run afoul of those restrictions, but I think it's emblematic of her campaign and where she comes from and the type of candidate she is. There's a lot of bluster and, riding this wave of Trump, the election was stolen from Trump, and I'm just going to come, so there's not a lot of philosophy there. She's not a technocrat. She's not talking about how to reform the office. She's not focused on the issues that I would hope a Secretary of State would be focused on and assembling a team who is. And so it doesn't surprise me, but I don't think it was, I don't have any reason to think it was an intentional mistake.
Well, Algernon, she took it down pretty quick. She had a quote in the paper, maybe even yours, saying, look, this was a mistake. The second I found out about it, we took it down. Fair enough. Got to give her, some props on that for sure. But again, how did it get there in the first place? It's an easy violation to kind of avoid, so to speak.
Right. I mean, this is the kind of mistake that reflects poorly on a candidate, since these are exactly the kind of rules that a Secretary of State needs to be aware of and in some cases to enforce. And so filing campaign finance reporting late, although this doesn't seem like a grievous sin, is also an indication of, these are the rules that you'll have to enforce. It's not a good look. I don't think that in terms of the people looking forward to voting for her, it's going to make a huge difference. And just as, Rep. Fox Young said, she took it down immediately and said, seemed to acknowledge the error and say, we want to comply with the rules.
Hey, I'm not a rep anymore. It's been a long time.
Sorry, former rep.
I'm not part of that club.
I love that. That's very funny. Sophie, interesting. We got to get to this. As for the actual positions of both of these candidates, they couldn't be more opposite, obviously. Incumbent Democrat Maggie Toulouse Oliver has spent her tenure working to expand voting access across the state, going on national television, a lot. But Ms. Trujillo wants to eliminate voting machines, mailed ballots, and early voting. Fairly drastic changes. Are voters ready for that kind of a thing?
They're drastic changes, and these are programs that are popular with New Mexico's voters. That until they became politicized through the Trump administration and then through his Stop the Steal campaign, you saw voters from both parties using all of these policies to expand their own access to the polls. And so, I think you've painted it correctly. These are two diametrically opposed approaches to voting and voting rights in the state of New Mexico. I was thinking about this morning. It's always telling, right, when a campaign involves, an election involves a strong incumbent and then a pretty weak challenger who didn't have didn't have a head-to-head in the primary. It does sort of seem like, especially for a statewide office, that the Republican Party didn't think that this was particularly winnable, and that this person is out there to make her points. I'm sure she would like to be elected, but I just don't see this message or this person being successful in New Mexico.
Algernon and Justine, I want you to get in on this too. By the way, I should mention the polling from the August 28th Journal poll shows Maggie Toulouse Oliver holds more than a 10-point lead in the race, 46 to 35% over Ms. Trujillo. Now, Algernon, interesting. We're not the only state where this is happening. There's at least, by my count, 10 to a dozen states, and the Washington Post has been reporting on this, where Republican nominees are just flat out just talking about the legitimacy of the 2020 election, and that's pretty much the entire, platform at this point. Is that going to work in New Mexico, I guess, is the bottom line question.
I don't see it working.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a large enough community of people who are in doubt about the election result. We do have a very small, determined, and vocal community of people who continue to question these issues. And Audrey Trujillo as a candidate speaks for that community. In campaign interviews with media, she'll say that that people have questions, right? That she's running to chase down answers to these questions and resolve doubts. Now, if you go and look at the body of interviews she's given to conservative hosts on the sort of podcasts and shows that are broadcast on Rumble and platforms like that, she takes a much harder line. She's referred to the election as a coup. Wow. Although when I asked her directly, she said, no, Joe Biden is the legitimate president. It's just that the process was messed up. So there are two different, there are some different messages for different audiences happening here.
Right.
Audrey Trujillo ran unopposed in that primary. And in terms of fundraising, in terms of polling, in terms of just having a very visible presence around the state, I think the incumbent is in a pretty dominant position at the moment.
Justine, I got to ask you, this idea of mistrust, let's not kind of step over this. That's a serious thing, not just in our country, but in our state as well. What do we need to do to get past that and get candidates back on solving problems?
Well, it's a serious thing, and to some extent, it is rooted in real policy decisions.
Okay.
One of the things that happened during the pandemic and happened under the last federal administration and across the country is that plain ballots were sent out. There was no, in a lot of places, there wasn't a ballot request form and then a ballot, and whether you think that's good policy or not, whether you think that it's a problem for ballot integrity or not, it's something that reasonable policymakers should be discussing, and things of that ilk. I mean, if Ms. Trujillo is concerned about ballot integrity and about whether there were issues in the last election, let's talk about what happened here and how it worked and where there might be issues. And if there, but she's not doing that. And a lot of people aren't doing that. And so this problem of distrust, it's very amorphous, and we're not getting at the real policy decisions, statutory changes, the work of a Secretary of State, on behalf of the public that needs to be done. And so I don't know how we get back there. We need candidates who really care about the work.
Yep. Exactly. Got a couple of minutes here. I got to start with this one, Sophie. We have a flyer, a mailer from the New Mexico GOP that shows an altered image of darkened hands cutting a white child's hair. There's a reason I bring up race here. Yeah. In the quote, in the flyer, it says, "Do you want a sex offender cutting your child's hair?" And the Republican Party in New Mexico is saying, no, it's not about race. It's just sort of some portent. That's what we're doing here. But boy, this is literally not a good look. How did this thing strike you?
Like a design choice.
Right. Exactly.
Right. No. Having looked at the image, there was a design choice. It was a choice that they made. And if they are so tone deaf as to think that that's, effective, but not a problem in terms of their, the message that they're putting out to the community, then there are some issues beyond the question of racism. But no, I think that this is a mistake that keeps getting made.
Right.
And if we're not learning from what happens each time, or perhaps what they're learning, I'm not on the inside there, but perhaps what they're learning is that's effective. It's also deeply cynical and I think unacceptable.
Justine, off limits, okay, fair game? I mean, House Republican Whip Rod Montoya from Farmington says the images, quote, were darkened to make the flyers gloomy. I mean, did they just miss it style-wise, or was there something more nefarious going on here?
Oh, I think it's pretty obvious what was going on, and
Yeah.
I guess I agree with Sophie that it was intentional. It was set up to have voters, have people recall these, bring forward these racist tendencies. I guess. I mean, it's nefarious. I'm glad we're talking about it.
Right.
It's an issue that's gotten a lot of airtime and exposure. I don't think that the responses from the party are plausible or particularly well done, but we're talking about it, and
right.
it's not in the shadows, and it's an issue that really brings forth a lot of emotion for people.
That's a good point. The previously seen tonight Reverend Charles Becknell Sr. was quoted in this article saying, quote, "It is time we put an end to this kind of crap. We're better than this," end quote. Interesting. Thank you all for that discussion. We'll be tracking that race and many others in the coming weeks ahead of the election. There's another major item on the ballot on November 8th, Constitutional Amendment 1. Now, if passed, it would pull a higher percentage of money from the Permanent Land Grant Fund for education. It's gained some criticism from those who think other recent investments in education are enough for now. But recent polling from the Albuquerque Journal shows a large majority of voters support the amendment. We wanted to hear from educators and parents this week. So, senior producer Lou DeVizio sat down with a teacher, a child education advocate, and a parent who brought to light severe shortcomings in our state's educational system.